Received, multiple injured. Subject was last seen going in the Alpha door, heading towards the Bravo stairwell. Tanner, go. Petrovich. Sing Song, go. McSweeney, Beatty, go.
Shots fired upstairs.
Contact team to Bravo.
Contact team at Bravo stairwell.
Second wave, go. Talk, go. Kaluza, go.
Shots fired upstairs. Put a suspect down.
What's your location? Multiple victims, Charlie, second floor.
We need to set up a corridor, one suspect down upstairs. We need additional units to clear downstairs. All available units.
Victims on second floor, Charlie.
Talk's going to be established on the Alpha side. We have a cab.
I got 6 deputies around.
Of course.
Have them hold the first floor Bravo to the stairwell, and if we can get rescue task force up to the second floor, Charlie.
Sing Song to OIC. You can start establishing rescue corridor. I'm going to be at the Alpha door.
Advise when first floor Bravo is clear.
First floor Bravo staircase is clear. We have an officer at the Alpha door for rescue corridor.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the show tonight. So hope you enjoyed the intro. That's kind of our way just to give people a chance to realize we're actually live, we're on time, the show's going to happen. So seems like it was pretty good. Give a shout out to everybody that's in the chat. We got the Alpha 1 Bravo 2 says, oh yeah, nice intro. Appreciate it, man. Thanks for being here tonight. And then we got, who else is on there? We got MROG USA, eMorg USA. Says, calling all cars. What's up, dude? We got Christopher Thomas saying, what's up, everyone? And then some other user. Yo, what's going on? Welcome to the show. And then Desk Duty, Radio Nerds Unite. Here we are, our Wednesday night. Absolutely. What's going on, everyone? Hopefully get some more people to join us as we go. If you do, make sure you're saying hi. So, guys, here is the deal. There has been a lot of kinetic activity in the country here recently. So when Rich and I were talking back and forth, obviously SWAT comms is very familiar to us, but we're like, hey, this kind of goes beyond that. This could really be, with everything that's breaking off, very relevant to anybody who's planning on acting within a team setting, within a, whatever you want to call a tactical environment. But these are some of the comms issues that could come up. Deborah, what's going on from Southwest Virginia? Good to have you here. We're not too far north of you, right here in Virginia, or right here in Maryland, getting ready for the snow. So welcome. Rich, what's going on tonight?
What's up? Yeah, looking forward to the snow.
Yeah, I think we all are. Should be a good time. And with the preparedness aspect of everything, guys, this is what we're talking about. Like we have this, at least we have some preparation and some notice that an event's coming. So I'm actually going to do a video on Skywarn tomorrow. That's going to be pre-recorded, but I'm going to release that tomorrow night. So just to set the tone for tonight, Rich, you're stacked on a door, the shield's up, breacher set, team's tight, and then, leave it to some sort of comms failure, and you quickly realize the truth that in that moment, your radio doesn't care how elite your team is. It just stops working. So tonight, I figure we talk very specifically SWAT communications, and again, when throughout the show, when we're talking about a SWAT team, SWAT comms, the whole bit, remember, it's not just relevant to SWAT. It's anyone training for any sort of tactical operation while operating as part of a team. So we're just framing it in the context that we both know really well. So let's get into it, because what it really boils down to is we're talking to the failures that nobody trains for, but most teams will eventually face. And this could be if you're a professional on a team, or even if you've done any sort of milsim event, if you've had comms issues, you can relate to this. So, Rich, I would say, I think SWAT incident operations can usually be and usually start out as one of the most chaotic, congested, and as a result, failure-prone comms environments in tactical operations.
Yeah, man. So before we get started, talk about SWAT, like our communications equipment, specifically what we have on our person. So we have whatever our issued radio is. We have the Motorola APXs, but also we have dedicated headsets for them. So my camera won't track me pointing back there, but we have Peltors or some other 3M product, or the old Sordens, MSA Sordens, but they're glued to our ears. And it's not just for hearing protection, it's also so we can clearly hear commands or direction, or what's going, situational awareness over other environmental sounds that may be around us. And that comes to be a problem, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Well, dude, I think that you and I have both trained together, and depending on the environment, if we're interior in a building, that's kind of one set of comms issues. If we go out into the woods, then you want a whole other set, and there's kind of some pluses and minuses to whatever kind of system it is you're running. So would you kind of just say, but I would just say, in speaking in generalities, would you agree that SWAT comms are pretty much their own beast?
Absolutely. SWAT, for a team that does mainly interior things, yeah, it's different than woodland. There's plus or minuses to whatever sort of headset or thing, additional radio accessories you have.
Yeah, well, and I think on top of all this, I think in part it's the fact that in a SWAT operation, the comms fail differently, and if they do fail, they kind of fail harder, and they always fail at the worst possible moment, and that's just comms in general. So let's kind of break down the comms problems that hit. Again, we're just using the word SWAT teams, but any sort of team dynamic, comms oriented stuff, what hits them the hardest, like things that I'm thinking right off the bat are going to be issues from stack interference. If your team's using a shield, the shield itself, if teams are incorporating it, the choreographed chaos that is incorporated with the breach, channel saturation, deep interior collapse, and multi-team confusion. So let's start with the stack interference. Have you ever experienced that at all?
No, the only issue we have is when we go deep into structures or basements. That's the only time that we start having signal issues. Something more basic than that is during the commotion, just a radio being bumped off of the channel, just being clicked one way or the other.
Sure. Terminal Elements in here. Thumbs up to live, everybody. I appreciate it, brother. Also, while your thumbs up at our like, when this live is done, head on over to the Terminal Elements channel, give his channel a subscribe. Him and I collaborate on a bunch of stuff. We talk, if not daily, almost weekly. So lots of good info on his channel as well. But with the stack interference, what I want to emphasize at that point there is, if you've ever ran into a situation where your own team is blocking your signal, you have bodies, they're wearing armor, there's hard ballistic plates in there, the shields themselves, the weapons themselves, the helmets. When you're stacked tight on a door, your radio is fighting through a wall of gear and people.
Not to mention when you're inside a driving Faraday cage, when you're inside the armor.
Yep.
So that's, again, back to our other episodes. That's prior planning and testing. You can get you around that.
Yeah, a great point. And what it comes down to is, if you guys are doing this or you're training, the tighter you make your stack of people lined up, the worse your communications problems could be. And this is going to be how you would kind of diagnose this, would be the whole thing of, you get a complaint from someone that says, hey, I keyed up, but no one heard me. So at that point, it's not the radio. You're looking at it, it's functioning, everything looks good. It's not the radio, it's the stack that's causing the interference.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Again, luckily we don't have that issue too much. We do have a slew of other issues, just technology wise.
No, and the new modern radios, these 700, 800, 900 megahertz radios do a much better job of punching through stuff. But there are so many teams and so many guys out there, especially on the prepared, responsibly armed citizen
absolutely.
standpoint, that are using UHF, VHF, and those comms are going to be affected drastically by that. And it's probably hard for a lot of them to train in a stack and see how everything will operate according, as a result.
Especially when people train, I'm not going to say we're not guilty of it also, but when we're training, when we're doing runs, we might go slick without gear, or we might not use comms because, hey, we're just training. Who are we going to talk to? We're all here,
Sure. So, and while we're on that, we're talking about bodies. Let's talk about the shields or a bunker, whatever your team's calling it. Did your team use them?
Yeah, it's a shield.
Okay.
It's a shield. We're not New York. It's a shield. Yeah.
Okay. So shields are comms killers. If you think bodies and plates will kill a signal, shields block the signal, they block microphones, they block antennas. If you're on the wrong band, if you're on a VHF frequency and your shield guy keys up, half the time, at least whoever's in front of him, if anybody, or on the other side of the door from him, is not going to hear him.
Well, you can think about this kind of brings me to like explosive breaching, and when they're using shields to block that concussive wave. So RF waves work similarly to sound waves. They propagate out, they get blocked by things, they bounce off things. So yes, the your shield's definitely going to block that quite a bit. And where's your radio kept? Usually center line or somewhere close to center line, the area you are protecting with the shield. So remote antennas, things like that can, especially with VHF, UHF, a remote antenna somewhere else on your kit is probably a good idea.
No, and that's what, again, at some point we're going to do some gear breakdowns of your gear and my gear. I actually run a remote antenna for a bunch of different reasons, but yeah, so get me on that. Let's talk movement. When every time the stack moves, the comm picture is changing literally with every step or every second that they take. One step forward, the signal dies. One step back, the signal comes back. It's unpredictable, and that itself, that unpredictability, makes it a dangerous situation.
Especially when you're trying to communicate with the outside, that's where that becomes an issue. And we go into relay runners or somebody dedicated near a door, like we spoke about before. Then we also need to have some sort of backup device we can use. In our case, our headsets we have a it's not Bluetooth, but it's the same megahertz range capability where I can either have it Vox or I have a button on my headset. I can press, I can talk to everybody on the team without using the radio at all on a completely different frequency too.
Just like a Bluetooth
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it works probably 30 yards, 50 yards, depending where you are. So redundancy.
MROG USA says EW jammers will
we talked about those last time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about those last time. They're so common now and they're so cheap. Well, they're illegal, so nobody gets them.
So I think a good way to go forward with this is to, as we go through this, kind of just talk about something. We'll recap. So I would say we identified the first problem. Operators lose comms because the stack itself blocks radios, their bodies, their armor, the shields, the helmets, and the type formations all degrade the signal. So we said why it happens. You get antennas that get buried up against armored plates. You have shields that block the signal, they block microphones, and then the operators, not that they're standing too closely together, but they're standing too closely together for the radio to transmit cleanly. And then just the movement alone constantly changes the signal quality. So let's get into some tactics to address that block of problems that we just identified.
Well, it's a tactic that it's not made to address the communications problem. It just happens happens to be that way. Generally, let's say it's a row home. We work in teams of 3. 2 guys are doing the work, and somebody's there as like backup / supervision. So that would be your guy that's outside of the doorway or standing within the doorway, who's, spaced a little bit further from those guys who would have the good signal. So that's how we get around that. And that's the person communicating while the other guys are doing work too.
Sure. Well, I would say, and something that maybe just to keep in mind for everybody's own, essay and problem solving is maybe just think about, if you're running into those issues, like micro positioning for transmission, so that if you're not getting out, maybe just angle your body a little outward or shift slightly when transmitting to give that antenna a clear path.
Well,
and
absolutely.
Yeah. And in addition to the gear and whatnot, I'll just mention quickly, because I mentioned the gear that I run. If you have a remote set up for your antenna, or any sort of wearing a radio on your back, like the old 90s SWAT movies and stuff, if you go to put a Camelback over your plate carrier, understand you're putting a water layer between you and antenna. You're going to shut your antenna out right away. So if you're wearing any sort of antenna on your back, you really can't wear a Camelback or hydration source with that unless you're mounting the antenna to the outside of that.
Yeah, we had a guy who thought he was in the 90s that did that, and we just kept pressing his emergency button until he decided to put it somewhere he could reach.
Severe hazing, right?
It has to
Can
be
we
done.
bring back a do?
Yeah, it has to be done.
So yeah. And then kind of to what you said, I think another easy solution, if we give it an actual title, is having a designated radio voice. Your number 2 man, your number 3 man, they can handle the radio traffic for the front of the stack, so that your guy on the shield doesn't have to do it. They can just, relay the message down the line.
Yep. And to get into something I touched on earlier, one of our big issues is that even though we switched to a dedicated band during operations, all the big bosses also have our special band, and they key up at the worst times possible. Like, where I'm swinging the ram and, a boss comes over with a minute-long message. Like,
we're definitely getting into that for sure tonight. And Terminal Element wants to talk about leadership at some point, so that's good. So, but for this, there we go. We talked about micro positioning, having this radio voice, and we'll call it antenna awareness as far as those things. So let's talk about now the noise associated with the breach, because the breach itself, whether you're doing explosive breaching, mechanical breaching, that can really be a comms destroyer as well.
Oh yeah, that's like a no communications time. Everything's so loud between, knocking and announcing, announcing as we're going in the house, yelling, police with a warrant, things like that. It's like a no communications time.
Yep. So just so people are aware, the different types of official breaching, we have explosive breaching, we have mechanical breaching, we have shotgun breaches. You can breach with a ram. It doesn't matter which one we're talking about here. The noise, as Rich just said, can wipe out the entire transmission. You can,
even if they just open the door.
Yeah, but no one's hearing a thing.
Yeah.
And like you had said, the timing of all that is brutal, because right before the breach happens, everyone wants to talk. Right after the breach happens, everyone wants to talk.
Going. Yep.
And during the breach, no one can hear anything because there's loud noises going on.
Yeah. And a way we get around that is we kind of have a liaison. So whoever's outside, usually not one of the front containment guys, but somebody dedicated outside to be our go-to between us and people who are curious or commanders that want to know what's going on. So we will stay on our band. We'll try to, keep our band clean and have that person relay what's going on. We even stand right next to the bosses so they can listen over our radio but can't talk over it.
Well, so I would say this is where discipline matters. And we talk about discipline. I talk about it all the time, even in the ham radio world. If you're an amateur radio operator, if you are a professional on a SWAT team, you need to act with discipline when you're talking on the radio.
Education goes into that too, so stopping out out, making visits or giving, short little talks at roll calls about proper radio etiquette when we're around, having our bosses talk to the other bosses, kind of sending the message along that it's not ideal that they come over our band.
Sure. Dude, and what's also interesting too is, in 2026, for anybody that could be watching this, that is like, hey, maybe this is a little out there because you're talking about explosive breaching and whatnot. What is the company? Is it IWA or TWA who makes all of the smoke grenades and flashbangs and whatnot? You know what I'm talking about?
IWA, maybe on the
IWA
civilian side. Yeah, it sounds.
They're making explosive breaching charges now.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
So you fill it up with black powder. It's got a water, basically director for the energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things. We're talking about comms during explosive breaching. As a prepared civilian, you're not taking any, steel doors down with it. But if you wanted to explosive breach, Desk Duty just came up with it, IWA. That is exactly who I was thinking of. If you wanted to get into explosive breaching at the civilian level, it's there for you now to do it. So these associated comms issues are very relevant.
As long as they keep it legal. Got to stress that on our channel.
Well, it's all about it. And IWA does a great job of explaining the illegalities with it. Like, you can't assemble it ahead of time. You have to assemble it on the range. But I mean, this stuff is pretty wild of what you can do with it. And Desk Duty's commenting like crazy. Yes. Whoever did that video where they went through all of their new stuff with the mortars, they're making some insane civilian friendly, I want to call it not devices, but equipment, or giving you an insane amount of capability for sure. Rich, if you haven't seen that video, you need to watch it. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Check it out.
So IWA, thank you, Desk Duty. So, okay, keeping with this. So we identified the problem, breaching operations, whether it's explosive, whether it's mechanical. And guys, if you're not familiar with mechanical, we're talking about if you're using a Halligan, if you're using a ram, any sort of like brute force. Rich, that's
hydraulic devices. Yeah, it's mechanical. Yeah. Anything non-explosive is like mechanical breaching.
There you go. Or you're using a shotgun. It's going to either through pressurization, through, just shock waves, disrupt your communications, or even just through the noise that it is creating. It could possibly wipe out the entire transmission because your breach noise is going to overwhelm most microphones. And I say most microphones because if you guys are using an Apex series Motorola with their new mics in them, if you guys weren't aware, they have between 4 and 6 microphones in the speaker mic. And if you go through your profiles, it actually has an extreme mode. And one of the things that was done in my agency, we actually hovered a helicopter over top of a guy talking on the radio in extreme mode, and it actually filtered out the helicopter noise. You could hear him crystal clear. But short of that, most microphones, the noise is going to kill your transmission.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I was going to say but had you talked about having discipline, having training, it still takes training because most people would think, oh, I'm in a loud environment. They want to start screaming into the mic. And that distorts it.
In addition to Motorola, 3M, which owns Peltor now, their microphone's really good at that. I mean, you're going to pay for it. There's pluses and minuses too, because it has to be on your mouth to be able to work. If it's any distance away, it's going to think your voice is interference and not broadcast it. But yeah, they've gotten pretty good. They've come a long way in a short period.
Well, and that's one of the things, though, and it goes against the traditional, like you said, it has to be against your mouth. Like Motorola has invested technology, put the funding into it. It goes against everything you're taught as no, keeping the mic 4 to 6 inches away. Yep. So you're not screaming into it. It's like, nope. In these cases, you have to do that, and the radio is designed to handle it.
Yeah, I'm looking something up really quick.
Oh, okay. So based on this, so he said, with the reason your transmissions are getting wiped out during breaching is the fact of the breach noise overwhelms the microphone. Operators trying to talk during the loudest moments, not going to work. And then the fact of everyone wanting to transmit immediately before or after the breach happens. And which kind of adds to all this chaos is the fact that no verbal confirmation can be heard during that breach window. So I think some tactics to address that. The first thing that comes to mind for me is like some sort of pre-breach freeze window established, like a 3 to 5 second period of radio silence before the breach will ensure a clean transmission that has to get through gets through.
Yeah, and with us, warrant wise, it's like when we step off, we have, set of commands. We say same thing every time. It's like we're straining sterility, I guess. We're keeping the radio sterile until, we definitely met an end and we're ready to talk again freely.
There you go. I like that. Keeping it sterile. That's perfect. And then I think as far as within your team that you could do is some sort of nonverbal confirmation system. So whether you're given a thumbs up or a nod or whatever you come up with to replace the verbal confirmations during the breach phase is something to have worked out.
Yep. And just another example from us, the breachers stay at the ingress or egress point. They're like extra manpower, but they usually secure that ingress or egress point. And the other elements of the team are usually just a short distance from them. They may be floors apart themselves, but there's always like a link between them, so they can yell command down to the breacher or communicate something down to the breacher with a hand signal, and they'll be able to pass that message on.
Cool. Okay. So that was before. So I think also having a post-breach priority order could be beneficial. So like if the point element, he should be the one to speak the first time after the breach, and then followed by the rest of the team in a set order. So nobody talks until they hear this person talk first.
So generally it's the third guy, right? The organizer, supervisor, whatever you want to call them, team leader. So they'll give an all clear for their floor. Other one will give it all clear for wherever they are. And once that is heard, the team leader will give property clear. And then that's when other communications can resume.
Cool. All right. Well, so you started to get into it. So let's address this. I think number 3, let's talk about channel saturation, having too many voices with not enough airtime.
Yeah. And again, it's tough when it's somebody well above you that's on there talking, because you can't really tell them to get off.
That and I think this is an issue. If a SWAT team, if you're not familiar, it has more moving parts than any other team in law enforcement, really, because they can kind of absorb everybody that's coming in as their support elements. So if you're trying to do this as a prepared citizen, responsibly armed citizen, if you're trying to set a team up like this, you have to understand the things that go into play with these operations is you're having an entry team, you're having a containment team, you have snipers, negotiators, command, medical, the perimeter, air assets, and every single one of them, for some reason or another, usually wants airtime. Right?
No,
everyone thinks that their update is critical, and then suddenly you have the channel is just a traffic jam.
Again, education, awareness. They don't really know how our communication setups work. They're covering my ears. They're awesome hearing protection, and I can't hear anything I can't hear anything from the outside if somebody's talking on the radio. That's all I hear with them. That's why it's like covering a large event or something on an Overwatch sniper type thing. I can't have my comms on listening to the event channel, because then it would be just constant talking.
Yep. Well, and Desk Duty just brought up his comment, and someone who isn't even on location yet.
Oh yeah.
You listen to any critical incident, he's 100% right. How many active shooter incidents, barricades, whatever. The corporal, sergeant, supervisor from however far away, he's coming in. He has to get on the radio to say something that is not really that useful. Yeah.
I can't count how many times on a job I'm making the Jim Halpert face, from The Office when he's just looking up into the corner, disappointed.
So I think the appropriate, maybe we could call that the command flood, because command loves to talk. They love updates. They love check-ins, but truth be told, during an entry, every second they talk is a second the team can't. And especially now with our modern radios, whether we're using the Apex series from work or we're using the XTS series with Rant, every second they're talking, we have talk permit enabled on all these things. You just get toned out of it. It doesn't let you push the button, so you can't override them.
Yeah, it's not like the old radios.
Yeah, not like the old radios. And let's be honest, then and you'll know this firsthand, then there's this sniper problem. And this is something identified, the snipers are often on a separate channel, which means they're missing updates. They might miss changes. They might miss movement. And when they do finally transmit, it's usually something really important. But if they're not tracking along with everybody else is doing, sometimes the entry team may be too busy to hear it because they're repositioning or trying to get eyes somewhere or lock down a different task.
Yeah, that's where that dedicated communications person comes into play.
To make sure they're
or
updated.
If you're a two-man sniper teams, somebody can be on one frequency, someone can be on the other, and you can open talk between each other. Just driving out to incidents. If I'm driving the armor out, or if I'm just driving out, I'll be on one channel. My partner will be on our dedicated channel.
Sure, that's
so
something.
The big picture, and I
get
get the little picture. Yeah,
to have it right. The big picture, little picture, exactly. So, I think here the clear problem would be too many units transmitting at once. So again, your entry, containment, snipers, command, negotiators, medical, air assets, they create this comms traffic jam. And it happens because everyone believes that their update is critical. Command, as we all know, probably everybody watching this knows that command likes to over communicate. We just said the snipers operate on their separate channels and may miss updates. And this just comes back to no hierarchy of who speaks when. And this is something that with all of my amateur radio operators on here with Hurricane Helene, the reason that was such a success was because the ham guys are used to operating in a net format and not speaking until spoken to and identified by net control, which is something we could probably better ourselves at as a whole. Go ahead.
So two things with that. I can't blame the bosses for wanting constant updates or wanting to know what's going on when they're the ones that have to answer for whatever dumb things we do. Not that we ever would do anything dumb. My second thing is, you mentioned aviation. They are absolutely the best on radio because that's how they communicate while they're flying.
Yep.
They're trained professionals in communication.
No, that is, whether it's an air asset, whether it's an Overwatch asset, they should always have the priority on the radio and if they have the ability to kind of call the game, for lack of better terms, they're usually the ones that are the best at it. So let them do their thing for sure.
Yeah. They're never stepping on anybody. They're waiting for the air to be clear, because that's what they do when they're communicating all their helicopter stuff.
Well, and people lose track of sight of the track of, you know what I'm saying? When they're flying, those guys aren't just listening to our radio. They're listening to air traffic control, their air avoidance collision alarm, as well as other just like their general air traffic frequencies, in addition to the incident. Like that's what those guys have become masters at.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, we're kind of getting into this. So some of the tactics to address this problem is, having a priority of voice hierarchy for your team to be beneficial, whether, if you want to send it to the entry team and then emergency traffic, your sniper updates, command, and then everyone else. I think another thing, if you've never practiced this, not that we could, again, the professional world is a little different. We're usually a little bit better at it, but everybody may benefit it at some point, is try to think in your head about doing one breath transmissions. Like try to deliver an update in a short, concise burst to reduce time.
Yep. Be brief.
Be brief. Be brief, brother. That's what you said last time.
Be brief,
yep.
brother. Be brief. Yep.
And then we talked about the snipers, maybe having like a sniper liaison operator. So there's just one guy monitoring both the entry channel and the sniper channel and just relay the essential information, which you guys said you do.
Yeah, something I heard on the radio today when I was working, and I laugh every time because it's usually like new guys. So in where I work, they call it an assist. Like when you're in trouble, you call for an assist and everybody comes and helps you. Everybody wants to let radio know, let the dispatch know that they're on their way. So this guy's calling for help, and then you have 10 units coming over that they're responding, and they're probably they could be stepping on the guy that's calling for help, trying to give out more details. So just stay off of the air and just respond. We'll figure it out later.
Absolutely. Well, and some of the technology just kind of, off to the side here, these radios have the capability, whether your agency has them set up that way or not. When you press the emergency button, you can set these radios up so that this radio has ultimate priority. So if your guy calls for help, he presses emergency button, no matter who's talking, if he keys up, his radio cancels everybody else out.
Well, they do have that, but not everybody, not everything's like a defined emergency. Things evolve, and
sure,
somebody hears over radio that something's happening, they might start sending everybody, and you don't think about pressing the button. You're just keying up on your thing.
And I think a really good thing right there is, if you are establishing these type protocols, is to have some sort of traffic jam protocol where if a channel becomes unusable because of so many people talking, your specific special unit, specialized team switches to a pre-assigned backup channel immediately, so you guys can still talk.
Yeah, and that's in place for larger incidents.
Okay,
we do encounter that.
Okay, so we're getting towards the end here, but you brought up in the beginning of the show about what I was calling deep interior comms collapse, because this is the one that gets people hurt. Once you push deep into a structure, especially if it's concrete or steel, this is where you brick your radio, right? Basements, long hallways, multi-story buildings, industrial sites. These are comms graveyards.
Yep, and I talked about it in previous episodes. We have the DVRS, in a suitcase pretty much. So it's a deployable repeater that we can bring one piece of it deep inside with us. The other part remains outside, so we still communicate with the outside world. But you're not always going to have that capability,
No, and the problem is, if you get into that deep, again, depending on your radio system, the newer radio systems are radios, like you had said before, they're cell phones. You lose a signal, the radio's out of service. It alerts you that, hey, you're not getting out, period. Your old school radio systems, you don't know. You're just in there, and the team doesn't know you're going. You're keying up, and you don't know that you're not getting out. You think that you're updating them. They think that you're being silent, and that's how teams get separated. And unfortunately, I bet if we did a bunch of case studies, there's no studies that I've ever seen, but I'd be willing to bet that has a major influence on how crossfires happen. That's how missions fall apart.
So I think we've experienced it in training before down in Georgia. Speaking of snow,
dude, that was. You know what though? But in that training, we didn't have radios. There was no comms going on. We just split two teams up and off we went.
Yep. But and it ended in a massive blue-on-blue gunfight. Even when we realized that we were both shooting each other, we kept it going.
Yeah, that was ugly.
Just for payback. But ultimately, we're trying to avoid a blue-on-blue. So that's why we use hand signals before we come outdoors. We verbal commands before we come outdoors. Flashlights, chem lights, things like that.
Yep. No, it was a good learning experience for sure. So yeah, with that, problem identified. Radios fail completely in basements, along hallways, the industrial buildings, concrete and steel structures, which we addressed last video with the Connex, housing units they're building now. And this happens because structural materials block radio waves. We talked about getting in high rises, your distance from exterior units increase. Your antennas lose their line of sight, and the team members themselves don't realize that they've lost comms.
Yeah, so I'm thinking of a word right now. Use it in a fire service. It's a really easy word, but I'm so tired I can't think of it. When somebody goes off and does their own thing.
Freelancing.
So they know freelancing. It goes back to training again, professionalism. If active shooter, whatever sort of thing it is, no freelancing. No team go run off a different way. We have to be kind of organized. We have to communicate. You can't have some guys with rifles running up from the other side of the building while you're working your way down a hallway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what's good is with your here we go, pre-planning or just having some common knowledge. If you identify the fact of, hey, we're getting deep in this building or what this building is made up of, you may identify early on that, hey, we got to leave operators at key structural choke points to act as human repeaters, and then have it already established that if you don't hear back from us when you transmit, you got to move back and reestablish comms.
With modern comms like we have, when you get that bong sound, you kind of know that. And it's like, okay, well, here, we're dropping you off. You're going to stand outside this doorway.
Correct. Yep. Well, and that could be, but again, it'd be nice to know going into it ahead of time if you did some like dead zone mapping, which you as a city did, where you're pre-identifying comms dead zones, but maybe getting into the buildings themselves to identify within again, the fire service is great at pre-planning. If you identify buildings that are huge and you're going to lose comms, get into the building and see where you actually lose them and have that data stored.
We're pretty good with that with big commercial buildings, like huge businesses, that especially ones that are serious about their security. Mm-hmm. But that's not taking into account the very old factory or the abandoned building,
No, sure. So we said early on, this will kind of be the last thing we touch on tonight, is how the SWAT operation can be some of the biggest in law enforcement because of all the different stuff they can absorb. So what about multi-team confusion? Too many elements, not enough clarity, because SWAT teams rarely work alone by themselves. We said in even just amongst the team, you have your entry, your containment, but then we bring in K9, your snipers, the negotiators, command, patrols usually on scene in some form or faction.
Yeah.
And everyone starts to talk and nobody's listening. And this is the topic in which comms discipline becomes life or death.
We work pretty closely with the other special units, and we trained together before. And luckily, they're the only ones, not counting the commanders, but they're the only ones that have our radio bands, our specific radio bands. So that's something we talk about beforehand. But you still get the random guy who gets a little too excited from K9, as an example. And,
it's a bad example.
Chew up our air.
Uh-huh.
Also, they're not wearing headsets. They're just hearing it on their shoulder as just another noise. They're not saturated in it, so they don't really understand, I guess.
But this is something, and again, on the professional side, we pretty much have it worked out. But if you're talking about your preparedness community, you're setting teams up for different things, it may be good to think about it as like, hey, if we're doing this and our neighborhood has this group established, whatever, are you dealing with outside groups? Could you, if you go to like a Hurricane Helene and you're operating in some sort of hurricane relief status, where there's all these people from all over, everybody has a radio, everybody's trying to get on there. Do you have your group on a set aside channel just for you guys? Because if you don't have clear roles, if you don't have clear channels, if you don't have clear priorities, you get chaos. And with every incident you watch where there's some sort of line of duty death or whatever else, chaos is what ensued, which ended up killing the person.
Yep.
So
And to take
like,
it out of the Fed's book, or I don't know, the official way, or how things are pretty much done everywhere. You have a call channel, right? Call channel, and then your sub tac channels. So general stuff on call. Then okay, we're connected. Let's switch over to here, or switch over to this channel.
yeah. So, and I think that's so. We identify the problem. We know too many people from all different units. If it's not your core group, all transmitting without coordination, and it happens because there hasn't been clear channel assignments or defined speaking roles. And then you start getting different people that are just interrupting tactical channels. And there's no really unified comms briefing that had happened before deployment, which is why the confusion came to be.
And
So-
not even just talking about radio communication, just communication in general, specifically being a negotiator, or even when you're on the arrest team, you need to have a designated communications person, because there can't be a million people talking, trying to give commands. Designate a communications person beforehand.
So I think the good thing would be here, and we do it. Look, I mean, look, when we're doing dynamic scenarios, when we're doing a course, we have each scenario assigned its own channels. Those instructors can talk to their instructors, and then we have a central command channel. So each team having its own channel, and then having one person act as like a cross-channel liaison, or knowing which channel you can meet on to coordinate everything, would be really good. And then
Yep.
having only
That's what
specific
we do
roles
real world.
transmit during.
So, yeah,
What's that?
that's what we do in the real world.
Yeah, exactly.
Different channels. So different teams, different locations, different channels, and we have one person that it either has a second radio or knows to switch over at a certain time and
Yep.
talk to our guy back at headquarters. Yeah.
And then I would say maybe even only having specific roles transmitting during specific phases, whether it's the entry team talking during a breach, and then, as you go in, things kind of change and go around. And then if you have negotiators on scene, they can stay off TAC channels unless there's they're delivering some sort of critical intel, but usually there's always a good liaison there. So that can be addressed that way.
Yep.
Terminal element, great point. Yeah, 5 medics on one scene, all asking the patient their own questions.
Depending on what the job is, it could be kind of funny.
There's a lead medic for a reason, for sure. And then what we both agreed upon, where we both kind of nodded our heads, is making sure, even if it's only for 60 seconds, that you're doing some sort of pre-deployment rundown just to define who speaks, when, and on what channel.
Yep. But also because we're on this right now, to getting back to something we mentioned, I think a couple shows ago, even though everybody shouldn't be talking, we shouldn't take radios from them. It shouldn't be like every crew, I used to see it in EMS. I know fire did it, or still does it some places maybe. Everybody should have a radio, right? For emergencies, everybody needs a way to communicate. Just because everybody needs a way to communicate doesn't mean everybody should be communicating.
Correct. Yep. But they should have the ability if needed.
Yep.
So
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah, that's an awesome point. So yeah, dude. And rounding this out, I think tonight we talked about all of the comms failures that I think we kind of both could come up with that hit SWAT teams the hardest. The stack interference,
so.
the breach noise, the channel saturation, the deep interior collapse, multi-team confusion. And I think the biggest thing, and reading the chats as guys are talking and commenting on stuff, is these failures aren't rare. They're actually quite common, and they're predictable, which means if it's predictable, it's preventable. But you have to
Just
train.
because something doesn't go bad because of it doesn't mean you shouldn't address it. If you experience these things and everything still goes right, you should probably still address it. Address it at the debrief, and then come up with a plan to solve it.
That's okay. Yeah. So they're preventable, again, because they're predictable, but that's only if you train for them. and only if you start to plan for them, because only if you respect how fragile your comms really are, that's when you can start to address the issues that we're identifying.
Yep, exactly.
So guys,
do that on your regular days, before the emergency.
Before the emergency, dude, it's always the way. So guys, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. I think this is pretty awesome. Next Wednesday, we're going to take this kind of specialty by specialty, and we're going to address canine comms specifically. So yeah, with that, I would say you guys be safe. We'll see you on the next one. Rich?
You can't be safe, be deadly. See you guys next time.
All right.
We have reports of an active assailant, multiple calls received, multiple injured. Subject was last seen going in the Alpha door, heading towards the Bravo stairwell. Tanner, go. Petrovich. Sing Song, go. McSweeney, Beatty, go.
Shots fired upstairs.
Contact team Bravo.
Contact team Bravo stairwell.
Second wave, go. Talk, go. Toulouse, go.
Shots fired upstairs. Put a suspect down.
What's your location? Multiple victims, Charlie, second floor.
We need to set up a corridor, one suspect down upstairs. We need additional units to clear downstairs. All available units.
Victims on second floor, Charlie.
Talk's going to be established on the Alpha side. We have a cab.
I got 6 deputies around.
Of course.
Have them hold the first floor Bravo to the stairwell, and if we can get rescue task force up to the second floor, Charlie.
Sing Song to OIC. You can start establishing rescue corridor. I'm going to be at the Alpha door.
Advise when first floor Bravo is clear.
First floor Bravo staircase is clear. We have an officer at the Alpha door for rescue corridor.